Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Deshatarine. Reading from Srila Prabhupada and Gurukula, chapter titled The Importance, Session 5. So the following is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Stoka Krishnadas Adhikari, dated June 20th, 1972. Srila Prabhupada writes, and this is quote number 29. Srila Prabhupada wrote to him, I consider the Gurukula school to be one of the most important aspects of this movement. It should be given all serious consideration by the members. If we are able to make a whole generation of children into fine Krishna-conscious preachers, that will be the glory of our movement and the glory of your country as well. But if we are neglectful somehow or other and lose even one Vaishnava, it is a very great loss. I am very glad that you are taking your work very seriously. You are the leader at Dallas. Now it is your task to become very, very responsible for the spiritual well-being of all the students there. Krishna will give you all intelligence and facilities to serve him nicely if you are very sincere to do so. This will please me very much. So that was a letter to Stoka Krishna in June of 1972. This next quote, quote number 30, is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Rupa Vilas Prabhu, also dated June 20th, 1972. So the very same day, Srila Prabhupada wrote these two Gurukul leaders. Srila Prabhupada wrote, I greatly appreciate, this is to Rupa Vilas Prabhu, your activities for conducting our school to the highest standard of Krishna consciousness. I consider your work the most important in the society because you are shaping the future generation of our Krishna consciousness preachers. This is not a small thing. I am depending very much on you all to assist Lord Chaitanya in fulfilling his mission to save humankind from very quickly gliding into hell. This is one of those quotes where you see what Srila Prabhupada wanted and intended for his Gurukul students in terms of their impact on future generations, their future impact on the world. Quote number 31. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Satsrup Das Goswami. This is July, 1st of July, 1972. Srila Prabhupada wrote, I am especially stressing the importance of our Dallas Gurukula for training up the next generation of Krishna-conscious preachers. This is the most important task ahead. Remember, this is 1972. I am seeing practically how wonderfully the children are coming out. We shall be very, very vigilant. That's not my stress, Srila Prabhupada. We shall be very, very vigilant and careful to maintain the highest standard of temple atmosphere and conduct in Dallas. You may install Radha Krishna deities and worship them very, very gorgeously. Simply by associating with the elderly members, the children will learn everything. The quality of the elderly members must be exactly to the standard of excellent Vaishnavas. Otherwise, the children learn by example and they will very easily be misguided if their senior god brothers and god sisters are themselves neglectful. Srila Prabhupada is stressing the importance of the elderly devotees to be exemplary. As we know, that's the definition of an acharya, right? To teach by example. Just today, I was on a forum for Krishna conscious homeschooling, and I put out a question about some advice on, or rather some information on how parents are doing in terms of organizing a morning program in home for their children before they go to school, as opposed to an evening program when they come back from school. What works better? What's the difficulty? What challenges they may have? What works? What doesn't work? And about 10 parents responded back. Wonderful, wonderful. I perhaps should read some of those comments they gave. Actually, I can do so. I can read some of those comments anonymously, of course, because they're actually very interesting. These are from devotees who answered that question I had. But my point I'm trying to make is that of those 10 or so parents who responded back, every single one of them talked about they themselves setting an example for their children rather than just creating a regimented morning program and forcing their kids to follow it. I found that to be very, very interesting. A couple of the respondents were themselves devotees, children of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. So they actually grew up in Krishna conscious households in the 70s and 80s. And now they're themselves raising their own children. So these are raising essentially grandchildren of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. I'm going to read some of those quotes because they're actually very, very interesting. So the question I put to the members of that group was such: what is the morning routine for your school-aged children? Is it practical or even possible to have a spiritual morning program? Homeschooling and non-homeschooling families have different needs, so I'd like to hear from both. That's the question I put out. Here are some of the answers. I will, of course, anonymize them. One person wrote back, and this person themselves went to Gurukula, and they're raising their own children. She wrote, I am not really an example, but on good days, lighting an incense and singing kirtan whilst having my favorite Krishna conscious music on in the background is a basic way of having a Krishna conscious morning. In addition to that, offering breakfast and getting kids to say, thank you, Krishna, thank you, Mom, that is usually followed by a discussion on that. Leading by examples, leading by example. All of the parents, the responses I got, they were all talking about leading by example. Leading by example is always much preferred for me than enforcing a particular sadhana. And this is coming from I need to read that last sentence. So that was one answer. Let me pull up another one. Here's one. This is also by a devotee who was herself born in Krishna consciousness, and now she's raising her own Krishna conscious children. She writes in response to that question, my father always did a morning program. Her father is a Prabhupada disciple. My father always did a morning program. He basically made the breakfast offering and sang through all the morning programs, songs to himself, offered incense. When we lived away from the temple, she's talking about her own family when she was a young child with her siblings, ages 11 through 15. We would hear it as we got ready for school. We rarely joined in, but it made an impression. That's interesting. So her father used to sing, and they didn't join in, but the impression stuck with them. When I had my own kids, we were sometimes near a temple, but most times not. I never managed to have a proper morning program except a morning offering, but my kids often joined in my father's morning program when we lived close to my parents before school. He does this at our house when he visits. When we were alone and homeschooling, we'd cook breakfast together and do the farm chores. Our spiritual practice was mostly for special occasions. We tried to cook a feast together, have kirtan, and make a special offering. I don't want my kids to have any negative association with Krishna consciousness. Rushing to force a morning program, coordinating 4 kids would have been very hectic. So these are just some of the answers I got. But the point being is exemplary. As Gurukul teachers, those of us who are Gurukul teachers, we were always, when we were being trained, always stress have to be exemplary. They will learn far more, the students will, from our example by what we do, more than by what we may say. I was visiting my in-laws, and my brother-in-law's daughter, my niece, wonderful, wonderful girl. So she's about, I'm gonna say 7 or 8 years old. And they were always sharing about how, there's always challenges, right? So one evening while I was visiting there, I just went in the kitchen and we just finished eating and I started washing the dishes. And my brother-in-law, the family members, they were in the front room, just talking and like that. So I was in the kitchen cleaning, washing up, doing some of the dishes. And the niece, she came in and she started helping me do the dishes. I thought nothing of it. I was just doing the dishes and I was there, we were doing it together, had a wonderful time. The evening ended and she went to bed and her mother said, she has never, ever, 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 ever done the dishes when I asked for help doing the dishes. Of course, I was a visiting uncle and there was all kinds of different things that inspired her to help wash dishes. But it's oftentimes the example that, not oftentimes, the example does have far more weight than precept. Okay, let's continue on. This is point number. Oh, I was right in the middle of point number 31. The quality of the elderly members must also be exactly to the standard of excellent Vaishnavas. Otherwise, the children learn by example, and they will very easily be misguided if their senior godbrothers and godsisters are themselves neglectful. We must develop our Krishna consciousness school at Dallas to be the model for education for the entire world. See, Srila Prabhupada's vision, extraordinary, how incredible his vision was and how far we've fallen from executing that vision. Let anyone see our Krishna consciousness children, and they will immediately understand the importance and necessity of such education for the citizens at large. The children of your country and other countries are simply growing up to be sophisticated animals. Srila Prabhupada did not mince his words, did he? What good will the education do? But if the people try to understand our Krishna conscious education and way of life and allow their children to be educated by us, they will see them come out as first-class citizens with all good qualities, such as honesty, cleanliness, loyalty, etc. It is very important work. and you are especially responsible to make it successful. All other GBC men should give you all assistance for building up the standard there. Again, this is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Satsrup Das Goswami. What time is it? We'll do a few more. This is quote number 32. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to someone unknown. Wow, so this is a letter that's just out there. No one knows to whom this letter was sent. Srila Prabhupada wrote, there's no date also for this letter, so there we have it. Child is the father of man. Take the development of that school very, very seriously. Srila Prabhupada talking of Dallas. Well, actually, I don't know if Srila Prabhupada is talking of Dallas because there's no date for this letter. So Srila Prabhupada could have been talking about either Dallas, New Vrindavan, or Vrindavan. Those were the three schools that existed. I think there was a small school in Los Angeles during Prabhupada's time. Anyways, Srila Prabhupada wrote, child is the father of man. Take the development of that school very, very seriously. Give them the facility to become the teachers of the next generation. Sometimes I chide my own Gurukul students how they have to learn well because once I'm dead and gone, the Gurukul is all theirs. They're going to have to be the next Gurukul teachers. And it's very interesting. Many of them certainly have the intellectual capacity to be remarkable Gurukul teachers, the commitment, the spiritual determination and practice to make wonderful Gurukul teachers. Anyways, do not neglect this educational program. You GBC members, so obviously this is a letter to a GBC person. You GBC members take it very seriously to develop that school for children. If we lose even one Vaishnava, it is a very great loss. This Gurukula is the responsibility of every GBC man, not just the zonal secretary. You all should actually participate in its development. Again, we see Srila Prabhupada's instruction, Srila Prabhupada's desire, Srila Prabhupada's guidelines, and how far we've fallen from that. But the story is not complete yet. There's a revival happening. Quote number 33. This is a letter to Satsrup Das Goswami. This is November 5th, 1972. Srila Prabhupada wrote, that school is very, very important business. The best man must be found to take charge there and develop it nicely. If he stays and works hard to build it up, that will please me very much. Unfortunately, at least into the 80s and 90s, the best persons were not always sent to Gurukula. In fact, it was those persons, oftentimes, who were unable to do any other service within ISKCON successfully, were sent to the Gurukula because they could not do book distribution, or they didn't want to be in the altar they were having. Anyways, the fact of the matter is that oftentimes, not in all cases, there were some of the most wonderful Vaishnavas I've ever had the experience of associating with, I met in Gurukula. But also, many of the most debauched, and anyways, the best persons were not always sent to Gurukula. That has long since changed, at least for the most part, but that is the instruction. The best of our devotees are to be in Gurukula. And this will be the last one we'll read today, this Thursday. This is quote number 34. This is a letter to Srila, sorry, not Srila. This is a letter to Mohananda Adhikari, dated December 11th, 1972. Srila Prabhupada wrote to him, I am very, very glad to hear of your desire to return to the Gurukul school and to apply yourself to developing it. I am so glad to hear this good news. Only a few weeks ago, I received a letter from Sat Sarup, wherein he informed me that Stoka Krishna has left Dallas. Well, that's interesting. So this letter is from December 1972. We just read a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Stoka Krishna. If we can find it. Here it is. So Srila Prabhupada wrote to Stoka Krishna Prabhu in June of 1972. And by December, he had left Gurukula. So Stoka Krishna Prabhu was unable to serve in that capacity for very long. And that's for who knows, we were not there at the time, but I will say this. It's not easy. Those of us who are parents, we know how difficult it is just raising children. But on top of raising children in a Gurukul setting, we have to maintain, as Gurukul teachers, we have to maintain our own spiritual dedication to such a high level. It's kind of like always being 24/7 on call, spiritually speaking, right? We have to, the maturity of a Gurukul teacher spiritually is, in many ways, it is, not in many ways, it is essentially being a guru. The maturity necessary to be a Gurukul teacher over the long haul, for an extended period of time. There has to be a genuine appreciation for Krishna consciousness. There has to be a genuine appreciation for the philosophy of Srila Prabhupada is teaching us. There has to be a genuine appreciation for Gurukula, a love for Gurukula, and what Srila Prabhupada wants for Gurukula to become. You can't fake it. You cannot fake being a Gurukul teacher, not for very long. You can muddle through with many other services, and I've done essentially, I've done every service in ISKCON, other than be a GBC, that can be done. All the way from the Bhakta, the new Bhakta end of the spectrum, all the way up into Temple President. I've done every single service, and all of them are difficult. All of them require spiritual maturity. But of all of those services, the service of being a Gurukul teacher is the service that you cannot fake for very long. You will soon be found out as a fraud by the students, if no one else. And the students, of course, children, they are innocent, right? But they will reveal to you your own shortcomings in Krishna consciousness. And I'll tell one quick story. We'll have to come back to this because this particular letter is quite a long one. So we'll redo this next Thursday. I was, for one summer, I had come back from India and I was spending a summer in Chicago. I think I was renewing my passport or something like that. I was headed back. So I was in Chicago for 4 months for the summer. And I was asked by the leaders there in the Chicago temple to put together, to start. I was very young, I was in my early 20s, if that. Yeah, I was in my early 20s. So I was very young. So they were asking me to help, to advise them on how to put together a Sunday school program for the kids. Some kids of the community there. And they arranged for a program where, or they wanted to arrange for a program where some of the students would actually stay in the temple over the weekend, spend the night, Saturday night, and then into the morning Saturday, into the morning Sunday. And they were really serious. I must give, kudos to the ISKCON leaders of ISKCON Chicago at the time. They were really serious about doing this. So they set aside an entire room for the students to sleep overnight. They had their own bathroom for the students to have. So there was some measure of safety for the students. So there was no sharing between the students and the adults. That was taken care of. So they were putting their heart into making this happen. So one of the things, I stayed overnight, slept with the students, myself and 3 other devotees in the same, it was a large hall, not a large hall, but a hall. So it was really fun. We had stories and then the students went to sleep. It was kind of like a camping out. Woke up the next morning, went to Mangalarti. Then there were some cleaning services. So I was arranging for the cleaning services. There was 7 or 8 students who had stayed over. So I arranged for some cleaning services. And one of the cleaning services were to take care of cleaning the bathroom. We were all going to clean the bathroom together, but someone going to do the sink, someone going to do the floor like that, make sure the bathrooms were nice and clean. So I was doing the roster for cleaning the bathroom. And I was doing it we had a chalkboard. And I was, okay, who's going to do the sinks? And I put that boy's name, the toilets, and that boy's name, and all things like that. And my name was not on the list. So one of the boys said very innocently, and this is why Gurukula, being a Gurukula teacher, will highlight your greatest faults in terms of one's ego, because they do it in such a benign, such an innocent, such a sweet way that you cannot help but be affected by it. So one of the Gurukula boys says, Ma Vishnu, your name is not on the board. Are you not going to help us? And this boy was saying it simply like he wanted to have me there and help and do it all together. I've been doing everything else together with him. Why would I not help him clean the bathrooms? And it wasn't like I was not going to be there. I just did not have my name on a list of the various items. I was going to be there to help, of course, supervise, but my name wasn't there. And I said, no, I'm going to supervise. But afterwards, I thought that, I really should have put my name on that list. Because by not putting my name on that list, I artificially separated myself from the boys based solely on ego. So it's very interesting how Krishna, through the Gurukula students, pointed out this this enormous ego of mine that I wanted to separate myself, put myself above the students in terms of when it comes time for seva. So when you are a Gurukula educator, teacher, you cannot fake your spiritual maturity for very long. Not to yourself. You can fake it to others, but you cannot, if you're honest with yourself, and this we read in one of Srila Prabhupada's letters. I think Srila Prabhupada was talking, that was a letter to Stoka Krishna, actually, was it not? Srila Prabhupada said, if you are sincere, it's very interesting. Yes, it was a letter to Stoka Krishna in June. Srila Prabhupada wrote, Krishna will give you all intelligence and facilities to serve him nicely if you are very sincere to do so. 6 months later, Stoka Krishna Prabhu was not there. We don't know the circumstances surrounding that. But it just goes to show that if we are not sincere in this particular service, that insincerity will be exposed, certainly to ourselves and even possibly to others. So we'll end there. That was quote number 34. We'll come back to point 34 because we've not finished it. Reading this letter to Mohanananda Prabhu. Om Sahana Avatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Vidyam Karuvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavidvishavahai. Hey Om Shanti 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 Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I will see you next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hare Krishna.